Hello, and welcome to Perspectives on Faith. I'm your host, Professor Amir Hussain. Our guest today is Dr. Shakila Hassan, who is an emeritus professor of anesthesiology at the University of Chicago and is currently the president of Haran Productions Foundation. Dr. Shakila Hassan, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be a professor of anesthesiology and a doctor at the University of Chicago?
I have been in this country for just about 50 years, and I came as an intern to Northwestern University. Okay. And from there on, after some bit of moving, I came to University of Chicago in 1961 and did my residency and went through the ranks.
And this is practicing as an anesthesiologist?
Anesthesiology faculty, got my tenure,
okay,
and stayed on. And in 1999, I decided I didn't want to work anymore. Okay. And that was like coming down my stairs to have coffee to leave for work. I told my husband that I'm not going to work. He didn't quite understand, and he went for his own. And I went to the bookstore and read 2 books. In several days, I was exploring what I was going to do.
What were those books?
The 2 books that I read were Hajj and Thousand Roads to Mecca.
Both by Michael Wolff?
Both by Michael Wolff. I didn't even see who the author was. I saw the jackets, and they looked beautiful. And I thought, what are they doing on the fiction table? So this was way before, 9/11. And after reading the books, I found Michael, and I contacted him.
Okay.
And it was on April 3rd, 1999. And I said, Michael, I would like to introduce you to the community.
Okay.
And I just figured that you were the one who did Nightline on Hajj in 1997. I happened to be watching that night.
Right, as an American Muslim going on the
Hajj. And this is the first time the pilgrimage was shown. And actually my friends remarked that this is what you do when you talk about Hajj. So we had interesting discussions about that. And that served as a dialogue piece. So I was surprised that lots of my friends hadn't seen. So I invited him, and he asked me, what is the date for that function? So I said, November 13th. I still remember. And he said, I'm not that busy. And why we are talking 7 months in advance? So I said, that's how I work, as if I had done 100,000 of those before, or whatever my style was. And 3 days later, the phone rang. And I cut the phone. I said to my husband, I think he cannot make it. Michael cannot make it. And he just motioned to me like, why don't you speak,
Right.
So I said, Michael, if this date doesn't work, we can make it work some other way.
Right.
And he said, no, I'm not talking about that. Please sit down. So coming from a stranger whom I had barely talked once, I felt comfortable. I wasn't threatened. So I just said, okay, I'm sitting. Now what's next? And he said, I would like to ask you if you would help me with a documentary on Muhammad. I said, peace be upon him. Why do you want to do a documentary on Muhammad? I said, can you think about that? So it didn't take me a split second. I said, the children who are born in this country, whose names are Joseph and Jacob and John and Jill and Joan, they all have something that they can identify with. Whether it's a documentary on the prophets, or whether it's a documentary on great human beings who have contributed.
They've seen the 10 Commandments, they've seen those kinds of
They have seen all of those. And when we talk about Amir and Usman and Aisha and Amna, these kids kind of, I'm sure, they think in their heart, what do we have to show there? Even though they identify with Moses, Jesus, so on. So he said, what are you saying? So I said, all I'm saying is it needs to be done. Now let me ask you some questions, I said. And he He was very kind. And I said, who is acting? Charleston Heston?
Mm.
He said, you got good taste, but that's not going to happen. So I said, all right, I have some thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should address the fact that Islam and Muhammad were not just for Saudi Arabia.
Right.
They are here today, and how they have been observed, revered, and followed
Mm-hmm.
in America.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're on. So from there on, we struggled to have Unity Productions.
Right. And you did the fundraising with Unity
Yes.
Productions Foundation.
First, I wanted to establish it as a non-profit organization.
Okay.
And I wanted to name it Foundation.
Mm.
Unity Productions was Michael's idea,
Okay.
but Unity was common in our themes both. And I thought Foundation should inspire us to have our young people going into the media
Mm-hmm.
some place to hang their hat on.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of the kids that I knew who had gone to Northwestern or anywhere for the journalism classes, they were getting any jobs or they had any means, and especially with a Muslim focus, they had nothing going on. So that's why it became a foundation.
And that's so important because when I speak to Muslim audiences, that's one of the things I talk particularly to young Muslim students about, that we have a great history of people like you who've come here as doctors, who've become professionals, engineers, lawyers, but we need more people working in the media. You know, where are the Muslim journalists? Where are the Muslim filmmakers? Where are the Muslim actors? Where are the Muslim writers? You know, we need to tell our stories, and it's wonderful that you thought of that when you did Unity Productions Foundation.
Yes, and I felt that as a first venture,
Mm-hmm.
we needed to address the most important human being
Mm-hmm.
that have been recognized by Michael Hart or name it whosoever.
Mm-hmm.
And libraries can be full. There is no language in which there is no information about Prophet
Right.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And there are books, and Americans or other Europeans or Westerners or non-Muslims have recognized him as top human being.
Mm-hmm.
And his life, every moment has been recorded. Sometimes you can sit and wonder when you see the books and books of Sirah
Right.
that whether he lived this many moments.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
There's so many volumes about
So many volumes and so much information. And he's a walkie-talkie Quran to us.
Mm.
And most of the Muslim practice
Mm-hmm.
is hearsay. I use it with
Sure.
respect, because we do not exactly read every line in the Quran and understand it how we are doing the work.
Right. The example is the example of the Prophet.
Example is Prophet,
Yeah.
because he exemplified. It's like a manual guide.
Mhm.
You know, how to live, how to pray,
Mm-hmm.
how to think, how to connect with God,
Mhm.
and connect with each human being in the hope of connecting the community.
Yeah. Carl Ernst at the University of North Carolina has a great book called Following Muhammad, which really is that, you know, as Muslims, what do? We follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that, and it was fascinating for me to think that Mecca, Medina, and the Hijaz in the early period, we often talked about what does that mean? We are going to Mecca, Medina, and Hijaz and create the life of Muhammad,
Mm.
Peace be upon him, like how he lived, how he traveled, what his life experience has been. But it's fascinating to see any human being living in America can see next door,
Mhm.
like what Muslims are doing. And that's my intense prayer for us Muslims, to live as Muslims. And we don't have to worry about anything, I think. So my role in Unity Productions was that I was asked to become the chair for fundraising, national chair for fundraising. I didn't want to serve on the board. I brought my husband into the picture, who's a fantastic human being. I'm so lucky to have him as life partner, and they all know him at Niagara and everywhere. And he's the professor, has been dean of the business school at Illinois Institute of Technology,
Okay.
and he also serves as the chairman of the board of trustees of the largest mosque in Chicago.
Okay.
Or America rather.
Okay.
It's a Islamic foundation in Villa Park.
Okay.
And we have a huge school, weekend school, etc.
Wonderful.
So he joined the board and kept completely the records, and he wrote every single check that was dispensed. So I'm sharing it with pride, and to give the community a sense, if you make up your mind, you can do it. And togetherness, there is value in every dollar that comes, brings energy.
Absolutely.
5,000 checks, just 5,000 checks brought us over $2.5 million. And no PBS or no station or no organization was willing to give us money. The money we got from certain organizations, or they are all listed on the PBS site.
Right, this is for Muhammad Legacy of a Prophet.
Legacy of a Prophet. We received, without filling in, the tedious means of application for grants.
Right.
Like finding a professor at Stanford and his wife knowing a trustee from Hewlett Packard going for walks. And there comes a large check in the mail. And a couple of other people who have donated very big amounts sending me an email. We'll be in Chicago. Can we have dinner with you? Okay, please come over and have dinner. And next day, a huge check arrived. So these kind of things told me something which I'm always fascinated about America and about Ummah and about our community spirit in Islam. To serve God, you need to serve one human being. And one human being is nothing without the community. And the community is nothing without each human being. So how much strength that comes to it. And many people asked us questions. I'll regress to tell you that I will call up a friend, say in Detroit. And they said, okay, come over, and I'm going to talk to my cousin in Grand Rapids. And when you are coming here on such and such weekend, maybe Saturday we'll have a fundraiser here, and Sunday we'll go there.
You go to Grand Rapids
And
and fundraise
they
there.
left. They hosted us in their homes. They opened their hearts, their homes, their pockets, and there was no fundraiser which didn't yield us whatever I had projected that we could bring. I went to 40 states.
Okay.
I did not charge a penny to anybody because I felt like this was my duty.
Sure, and this was your contribution to the efforts. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of people ask me why you didn't do in-kind donations. You could get tax credit. I don't know. I felt so intensely involved. I was breathing the project, and I didn't want to have the burden that I asked my friends to give me money so they can cover my expense. That was my logic. So anyway, to make the long story short, wherever I went, we were received with open arms, open hearts, open homes, and people gave generously. And some of them who asked me questions, I said, look, we talk about being 3 million, 5 billion, 7 million. Every time somebody reflects, the number goes up. If each person gave $1, where will we be? How is that going to be? Are you going to go to taxi drivers? I said, don't underestimate taxi driver. Nobody looks at the vote when you put it in the ballot, that whether it's a taxi driver who gave it or the millionaire who gave it or billionaire. So it gave me energy and spirit and encouragement, because I felt if we all could work together, the world will be so much better, so much better. And so the same spirit, post 9/11, we had to change a lot of things because, all of a sudden when the documentary was taken to PBS, they were fascinating.
Because you started to do this fundraising before 9/11.
Oh yes, 1999. From the day I talked to Michael, I was on the phone.
Okay.
And as Michael has often said in many settings, you should see Shakila's telephone bill because there are stacks of it. So anyway, my husband has been extremely patient and kind and generous in his heart and spirit because he was committed to it himself. So we did it together as a team, and we all worked as a team, and we worked together with the community as a team, and that was fascinating. In Cleveland, a friend of ours, Dr. Ziaur Rahman Khan, and his wife, Dr. Samira, hosted a big event for Ibn Sina Society. And there were Muslims from all over the world. And there, I always take pride, like standing up on the podium, I asked to identify the countries that I haven't mentioned in the audience.
Right.
And one woman stood up and raised her hand and said, "I'm from Korea." You know, I wouldn't think of
Korean Muslims.
thinking of Korean Muslims.
Sure.
And there she was. And she said, you know, they are there in Japan too, you know. And she came over to our Chicago fundraiser. And it is, to me, that was enough. And I'll share with you one very, something that warms up my heart. There was one check that came for $25 from Hawaii. And I must have spent, according to Michael, at least $40 to trace that man. And he said, why are you doing that? I said, because my heart says that when I'm talking about how many states we have gone to, there is one more.
Yeah.
And it means a lot to me. So I called him up, and he was embarrassed, rightfully, in the sense that he said, you know, I'm only a resident, and I only sent $25. But I said, no, please stop excusing yourself with that, and you're being very kind, but your generosity has touched our hearts. And it made me feel proud that there is hope to get to the 50th state.
Right.
You know? So these kind of things, I still have my hopes and prayers for our community that together we can achieve, just like in American Spirit.
And that's so crucial because we are such a successful community. If we look at American Muslims, you know, you're a professor and a doctor, I'm a professor. We have a long list of people who are quite successful here in America and have made the money. We don't have that same philanthropic tradition because we don't have that same historical memory of having been here for 200, 300. I mean, we've been here, if you look at the African American community, for hundreds of years, meaning the African American Muslim community. But in terms of an immigrant community, we've only been here since 1965 with the immigration law change. So I think it's marvelous that you're doing that kind of fundraising, which I think is crucial for the future of Islam in America.
I think so. I think, and that same thing I have incorporated into my activities to the present day. I always enjoyed meeting people from different parts of the globe. I take pride in, probably I bore some people, that Muslims in America represent their diversity of their own. We come from 87 different nationalities. And I say it with pride, and I also say, make a humbling statement that, look, we have come from 87 different nationalities. It's not like Shakila's observation, having worked with several different kinds of people, or people who have come from different lands. But you know, Georgetown University's America at Crossroads, Muslims at Crossroads. You know, they have published 2 books, and it tells you. And I work closely with Zahid Bukhari and Suleiman Nang, and interacting with them and finding out what they are doing.
Right.
It's fascinating. We need to learn about each other.
Absolutely.
And what are our traditions? What are our goals? And how do we fit in the mainstream of America?
Absolutely.
So the diversity has been God-designed. And it goes back to share another example that is very vivid in my mind, is unity. God is unity, God is Noor, God is light, God is peace, God is everything. So if you look at it, God designed diversity. I think perhaps there is a unwritten lesson there that to appreciate God, you got to appreciate diversity. To appreciate God, you have to serve God. And how do you serve God? By one human at a time. And one human at a time is not just one kind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just, you know, I get carried away in my exuberance because my earnest prayer is that it should be understood. It should be taken seriously. And I read Pablo Neruda and Whitman's poetries to understand what is grassroots. 100 years apart, they had the same concept. So it's nothing we are discovering.
Right.
It's here. And in America, it is explicit in the lush lawns that we have, right?
And that diversity is so crucial to being a Muslim. You know, one of my favorite ayahs from the Quran is from Surah Ar-Rum, the 30th chapter of the Quran. It talks about one of the signs, among God's signs, is the diversity of your tongues and colors. The fact that we speak different languages, the fact that we come from different ethnic backgrounds. This is something that is a sign from God that's to be respected and worshipped. Talk to us a little bit more about that wonderful documentary, Muhammad, Legacy of a Prophet. I use that in class because it's a great way of telling some of the history of who the Prophet was, but also connecting to contemporary Muslim lives. I think in some ways that's even more powerful. How is it that modern American Muslims connect to that life?
You mean Prophet's life?
The Prophet's life, yeah. But I'm curious more about the documentary. When did PBS get involved in this? Because of course it aired on PBS.
You know, shortly before. Let me backtrack. I think we finished the documentary production, not quite revisions or cuts, etc. But the whole filming was done, and several months before the broadcast.
Right.
And the documentary was taken to PBS by Michael and Michael Schwartz, the KK Media person who was mainly our producer.
Okay.
We hired him to do this, and he has an excellent record of PBS broadcasts. So he, in spite of his excellent record, he was not able to get it on early on. Their support or their promise that it will go on PBS. You know, usually they give you a letter of intent that yes, you will be. We will consider you for PBS national broadcast or whatever. But when they saw that documentary, they were fascinated with the rough cut. And they asked who supported it. Crucial question, post 9/11, right? So when they were shown the database,
broad
they got
grassroots support.
more curious.
Right.